Okay, I'm Olaf of the company Audiowerkstatt. I can show you a little bit around what we have products here. It's two ranges of products. The company Audiowerkstatt, all the stuff we do is handmade. Everything is hand soldered here in Berlin. Small series. One half of the tools is sequencers that are very live jam orientated, and the other stuff, that smaller boxes, are all tools that are dealing around clock, manipulating MIDI clock, DIN sync or sync 24, sync 48, and analog trigger clock. For a very fast run through that clock modules, one is we call it MIDI restarter. It's a tool where you can restart the sequencer, the slave, on the start of the next bar. So if you have to change something at your slave sequencer, you have to stop it. You don't have to mind about start it in time. You just push the red button of this little tool, and at the next start of the next bar, it starts in synchronization. There are several options on how to start, and if it's 4/4 or 3/4 measure that is used. But I think for a fast run through, perhaps that's a first thing. The other thing, the next, is a clock divider for MIDI. Is as you know, from an analog clock divider, but for MIDI, so you can take the clock in full speed or in half speed, a third of the speed, and especially that odd numbers like 3 or 5 or 7 make really interesting results of two different sequences which are still running in sync but in different speed. So after 7 bars, for example, in this example, they are in perfect timing to each other. Very interesting. This is a clock shifter. With this you can shift the MIDI clock, MIDI steps forward or backward, and it's for making special, especially in experimental music, special polyrhythmic things where you change a little bit the rhythm. It's remembers if you start and stop the master clock, it remembers and does the same shift again after restart. But you can also start it in a special mode where it's for correcting a slave that makes problems. When you lose some synchronization, you can correct it here, and then if you restart the master clock, it resets to 0, that you always start clean. The other clock tools in a very fast run through, this is a converter from DIN sync or sync 24, sync 48 to MIDI clock, and the other way around. You have both outputs, DIN and MIDI. They are both at the same time always running, and you decide if you take as master clock the DIN sync or the MIDI input. It's DIN sync 24 and 48, you can adjust it. This is the same as the MIDI restarter we had as first, but for DIN sync. So if you use, for example, a 303 and an 808 and want to change the setting of the 303, you can stop it and restart it in sync at the start of the next bar. The last tool for the clock series is that little trigger to MIDI clock and MIDI clock to trigger. As with the DIN sync, this one is able to convert in both directions, so you can take, for example, the clock of your modular system, the analog clock, and generate a MIDI clock out of it. It has a lot of stuff to adjust. You can decide if it's voltage trigger or shortcut trigger for the old Korg and Moog machines. You can decide the clock divider of the input and the output, and the pulse lengths of the clock pulse of the analog output. And it's you can also use this as an analog trigger tool. If you don't use the MIDI, you can use the analog outputs, inputs, and use it as converter from V trigger to S trigger or the other way around, or use it as clock divider, as analog, or as analog clock multiplier. It can generate a clock that is 8 times faster than the clock that comes in, or trigger to gate or gate to trigger interface. So a lot of tool functions you can use also. That's